Welcome, B'Shem Hashem Na'aseh V'Natzliach. We are doing Parashat Va'et Hanan with the Perush, with the commentary of the Zerach Shimshon. This should be in the Zechut and the merit of the Neshama of the Zerach Shimshon, Rav Nachman Michael, Rav Shimshon Chaim ben Nachman Michael Nachmeni, his Zechutot Arena Alenu, and in his merit, we should all merit all the brachot that he gives for everyone that learns his Torah. And it should be for the refuah shalema of kol chole am Yisrael. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam shehakol nihya b'dvaro. So this Parashat Va'et Hanan, as we know, has in it the Ten Commandments, meaning the second repetition of the Ten Commandments. The original Ten Commandments, when God gave the Torah, was on Har Sinai, which is on Parashat Yitro in Sefer Shemot, in Exodus. This here, Sefer Devarim, all of the book of Devarim, starts with Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, in the last 37 days of his life, basically talking to Bnei Israel, reminding them of certain things, one of which is the Ten Commandments. So therefore, the Ten Commandments is repeated in this week's Torah portion by Moshe Rabbeinu himself. So because this portion of the Torah, Parashat Va'et Hanan, discusses the Torah, the Ten Commandments, the Zerach Shimshon takes a pasuk from Mishlei of Shlomo HaMelech, and he elaborates on this pasuk, on this verse. It's a very famous verse that a lot of people have heard before. It says, Katuv ba'pasuk, it says in this pasuk, the verse in Mishlei, Kiner mitzvah b'Torah or, which basically translates into the fire of a candle. Ner is the fire part of a candle, not the candle itself. Ner refers to the esh, the fire on a candle. Ner mitzvah b'Torah or. The fire of a candle is the mitzvot, b'Torah or, and the Torah is light. What does this pasuk mean? Comparing the mitzvot to a candles, what do you call it? The candles fire, the candles flame, yes, the candle flame, and the Torah being compared to or. And he says, the reason why the pasuk compares the mitzvot to a ner, to a flame, and the Torah to or. What is or? What is this light that he's comparing the Torah to? What light are we comparing it to? The light of the sun. Or refers to the sun. So the Torah is compared to the light of the sun, and the mitzvot, the commandments in the Torah, are compared to a flame. Ner mitzvah, the commandments of the Torah are like a flame of a candle, and the Torah itself is like the or, like the sun, the light of the sun. And the reason is, Mishum dekai melan Gemara, because the Gemara, the Talmud says, in Sotah, page 21, Sha'avera sha'adam oseh, any sin that a person commits, mechabba et ha-mitzvah. Any sin that a person commits erases and turns off, basically, any mitzvah that a person has done. I'll repeat that. You have a mitzvah that you did. 10 minutes ago, you did a mitzvah. 10 minutes ago, you did arvit, you did mincha, you prayed mincha. You come, you go home, and all of a sudden something happens, and you get angry, and you lash out. Becoming angry is an avera. Right? You doing that takes away your mitzvah of doing mincha and arvit. How is that so? Because in Mishlei it says, ner mitzvah, the mitzvot are compared to a candle, a flame, which could be put out. A flame can be put out. So when you're doing that mitzvah, you've taken the flame of the mitzvah. And when you follow it with an avera, you just, what? Extinguished the fire of that mitzvah that you just took on. Ve'ena mechabeh et haTorah. However, the difference is, any Torah learning that you have had can never be extinguished. Why? Because according to the Mishlei, the Torah is compared to what? The light of the sun. You can't turn off the sun. You can't extinguish the sun. So any Torah learning you have will last forever. It'll never be extinguished. Just in case, someone on live, if you guys can hear me, give me a thumbs up. Just want to make sure the sound on our live broadcast is working on Facebook Live. Give me a thumbs up if you guys can hear me. Okay, wonderful. So when a person does learning Torah, the Torah can never be extinguished. The zechut, the mitzvah that you've done of learning Torah, the merit of that Torah can never be extinguished with anything. But mitzvot, commandments, because Mishlei compares them to a ner, to a flame, if you do an averah, it extinguishes the mitzvah that you had. It takes away from that merit. We find from the words of this Talmud, the Gemara, someone that sins does not have the zechut of that mitzvah that he had done anymore. And because of this, the pasuk compares a mitzvah to a candle, because a candle is never lit forever either. And it turns off. You can turn off a candle. It doesn't stay forever. But when you sin, the sin does not have the power to take away the mitzvah of learning Torah. When you learn Torah, nothing can take that zechut away. That merit stays with you forever. And this is why there was a pasuk also that says, ner reshaim yid'ach, which means that the mitzvot, which is compared to a ner, a candle, that the reshaim, sinners, wicked people that have done, will be turned off. That's another pasuk that comes from Mishlei. It says, ner reshaim yid'ach, the candle of the wicked will be turned off. What does it mean the candle of the wicked will be turned off? Because they're wicked, because they're reshaim, any mitzvot they do will be deleted. Because all the avarot that they do afterwards take over all the zechuyot that they have. It's like they never did it.
So if the Torah is presented to them, they feel ashamed. They'll stop doing what they're not supposed to do, basically, right?
No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying essentially that when you learn Torah, learning Torah and doing the mitzvot are two separate things. They're both great in their own way. However, the difference between learning Torah and understanding the Torah and doing the mitzvot, the commandments, are two different things. The difference is when you learn Torah, the zechut, the merit of that Torah can never be taken away from you. No matter how bad you become, what bad things you do later on, at least you have the merit of having learned Torah.
But knowledge with you up there, right?
Exactly. But the mitzvot that you do, the good deeds that you do, they're compared to a flame. If you do averot following that mitzvah that you did, that averot extinguishes that mitzvah you did. Takes it away. And he says, we can give another reason, more reason, as to why the pasuk compares a candle, a mitzvah to candles. Why? Lefi shaner enu nidlak balayla. It says, even though a candle, what is a candle meant for? A candle is lit at night when it's dark. Right? You light a candle when it's dark. But you don't light the candle everywhere. You light the candle in the room that you are present in a room that you need it. If you're not going to be using a certain room, you're not going to light a candle in that room. It's useless. You're not there. Why do you need a candle there? So a candle only goes where it's needed, where you are there so that you could use it. It is only in a place that is used. Any room that's used, you put a candle there. So too, the mitzvot also. This is very essential. The commandments that we have in the Torah, the obligations of the mitzvot are not for everybody. Are you obligated in all of the mitzvot? Are you obligated in all of the mitzvot? Can you tell me that you have an obligation for all of the 613 mitzvot? You don't. Because you're not a Kohen, are you? No. If you're not a Kohen, there goes part of the Torah, the commandments of Kohanim. If you're not a Levi, there goes part of the mitzvot of a Levi. If you have a Brit Milah, right, you have the mitzvah of doing Brit on your children. If you don't have sons, you don't have the mitzvah of doing Brit Milah. There goes that mitzvah. When you have a firstborn, you have the mitzvah of Pidyon Haben. After your firstborn, every other child, you don't have the mitzvah of Pidyon Haben. So the mitzvot are in a way selective. There are certain mitzvot that we're obligated in doing, certain mitzvot that we're not, certain mitzvot are only for women, certain mitzvot are only for men, so on and so forth. So we're in no way can one person do all of the mitzvot of Torah, because you're not obligated in all of the mitzvot of the Torah. Everybody's obligated to a section of the Torah. You understand? Therefore, just like the candle. A candle is lit only in the room that it's going to be used. If I'm going to be in this room, I'll light a candle in this room. Right? That's the ner. That's the flame that I need for light. Right? However, the light of the sun, which is always there, even though we don't see it, it's still there. The light of the sun is always shining, right? It is always shining on the entire world in the same way. It's always there. We won't be able to see it, but the sun never goes out. It's there, right? The time that the sun is shining, when that sun is lit on top of your section of the world, it doesn't pick and choose where it's going to shine its light. It's lit everywhere. When it's the time for this part of the sphere of the earth, that entire sphere is lit. There's no sections of, the sun is not going to go here. No, when it's time for it to be on that side of the world, it's there. You can't turn it off from one section and not picky and choosy. It's not where you need it. It's there. Right? That's why the obligation of the learning of Torah is just like the sun. Everyone's obligated. The obligation of learning Torah is for everybody. The mitzvot is not for everyone. But the obligation to learn Torah, that's for everyone. And therefore it could never go out. It's not something that belongs in one place one time and it doesn't belong in another. The Torah belongs there all the time, forever. It's like the sun. It's always there. Can't get rid of it. You mustn't get rid of it. It has to always be applied. Yes, the laws of being a Kohen in the Beit HaMikdash does not apply to you, doesn't apply to you. Maybe it does apply to you. But does that mean you don't learn the halachot of Kohanim? Absolutely not. Every single Jew has to learn all the laws that pertain to a Kohen. Every single Jew has to learn all the laws that pertain to a Levi. Why? Because the mitzvah is the learning of the Torah. The mitzvah right now is not doing of that mitzvah. Yes, you won't be doing the avodah, you won't be doing the services in the Beit HaMikdash because you're not a Kohen. However, if you learn it, you get the zechut of learning that mitzvah, and that counts as well as if you are doing the mitzvah itself. That's the zechut of the Torah. How do I get the mitzvah of doing sacrifices in the Beit HaMikdash? By learning about them. Today, as a side note, how do I get the mitzvah of doing sacrifices? Instead of the sacrifices, what do we have? You read the korbanot, and also the tefillot. The amidah that we do in the morning, afternoon, and at night represent the tamid of the morning and the afternoon, which was the korbanot, the sacrifices that were brought in the Beit HaMikdash. So we took one avodah, one service of the temple was taken away, and we replaced it with another service called the tefillah, the prayer service. That's why we have the tefillot during the day. So whenever we learn about these mitzvot in the Torah, we get the zechut of the Torah, and that can never be taken away. So you have no excuse to say, I'm not a woman, why should I learn these halachot? I'm not a Kohen, why should I I already did the mitzvah. I don't know. Somebody only has daughters. You don't learn about Brit Milah? Of course you do. Because that's Torah. Learning Torah has no limits of what subject I should learn, what subject I shouldn't learn. Questions afterwards. And every person learns Torah as much as they could reach. Meaning, yes, we understand that not everyone's going to become the Gadol Hador, the greatest sage of the nation. Every person, to their own mind's capacity, must learn Torah. Everyone has their own understanding. You sit down, you learn it as much as you can, just like in other wisdoms, mathematics and sciences. Just because you're learning science doesn't mean you have to become a doctor. Doesn't mean you have to go become a surgeon or something in the field of, in the scientific field of medical field because you learn biology. No. But we still learn biology in school, in high school. Can someone come, it would be dumb for someone to come say, I don't even want to become a doctor. My field is never going to have anything to do with biology. Why should I learn it? No. You learn it. It's not such a good example, I understand. But the Torah even more so. Every person learns Torah as much as they can grasp. But learning it, you must. Whether in mikra, meaning if a person has the mental capacity to learn Torah shebichtav, which is our Torah, the Torah scroll that we have, like we use the art scroll in synagogue. You have that capacity, go learn the Torah, learn it with the commentaries, learn it with Rashi. That's your capacity, that's what you do. Mishnah, your capacity is a little higher, you can learn, the oral tradition, Mishnayot, you do Mishnah. Gemara, which is higher, it's a little more difficult. Whatever you can do, you must do, because that's like the sun. It's supposed to be everywhere. It should encompass all of your life, all the time, because the sun's always there. It never turns off. That's another reason why the Zera Shimshon says, Ner mitzvah v'torah or. Mitzvot, the commandments, were compared to a flame, because a flame is momentary, it's in one place and it's not another place, it's on need basis. Torah or, the Torah is compared to the sun. Why? It's not by needs basis. You always need it. Let's say it's nighttime in the United States here, and it's daytime in Eretz Israel. And the sun, for some freak reason, obviously because we used too many straws, obviously, right? Because we used too many straws, all of a sudden the sun turns off. Right? Are we going to say, oh, good thing it was nighttime here, it's not going to affect us? What would happen if for a millisecond the sun doesn't function? You know what happens to the world if the sun doesn't function for a millisecond?
All the planets fall out of the
Entire planet, everything is going to, yes, he's right. If any of the planets, whether it's the sun or anything, but we're using the sun right now, forget if it moves a millimeter to the right or the left in its position, chaos, the entire world will cease to exist. Everything. So it needs to be there. It's always there. That's the Torah. Ner mitzvah v'torah or. Torah is the lifeline of the world. It's not like a ner. It must always be there. It must. They say a story about one of the tzaddikim. I forget which one of the chachamim it was. It was on Purim. They caught the Rosh Yeshiva. On Purim, in a yeshiva, I don't know if you guys ever experienced this, but in a yeshiva world, when it comes Purim time, it's time to party. I mean, if you're in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv on Purim, you will not have this much fun anywhere else in the world. No holiday compares up to it, by none. It is the happy, I'll tell you one of my own stories about Purim in Jerusalem. My man, you don't understand what goes on. It is a place you really feel at home. I'm walking down the street on Purim. We were invited to a friend's house, but like in the morning, when you're in yeshiva in the morning, you give mishloach manot, you give gifts to your friends, and in the afternoon you go for lunch or whatever it is, and drinking and partying at your friend's home. So I'm walking uphill, okay? And I see, you've seen the buses in Israel, the double buses. They're the large ones. We have here too as well. And I see one bus is coming down the hill, and another bus turns a corner and is going up the hill. Now they're parallel. And this driver is facing the other driver of the bus. They stop because why? The driver that was going up the hill starts honking, going and he starts motioning to him, pull down your window for the other driver. So the other driver, I'm watching this. I see the other driver's like, maybe something's wrong, right? So he pulls down his window. That other guy pulls down his window and he sprays his face, the other driver, with this the thread sprays. What is it? Rope spray?
Funny silly spray?
Silly spray.
Yes.
Sprays the entire face of the other bus driver with silly spray, and then you hear the other bus going back and forth with people inside the bus singing and asking, and they're all singing. Like the bus is literally shaking, and the bus driver is singing. There's music not on a private bus. This is a city bus. Okay, that's what happens in Israel on Purim. Just on Purim. It's like the happiest, craziest time of the year. It's from that all the way to like people in the craziest costumes going up on a bus and going off on a bus, just, How did we come up with Purim right now?
The rabbi.
Huh?
The rabbi.
Which rabbi? What are you talking about?
We're talking about a rabbi.
So the rabbi, because he knew this is what goes on, right? So they catch the rabbi sitting in his room and learning on Purim, when everyone else is dancing and they're merry and they're drinking and stuff. So his Talmidim see, go, Rebbe, it's Purim. Why are you learning? Says to him, for a moment I started thinking, if everyone's dancing and partying, who's learning? And if no one is learning, the world cannot exist. I felt somebody's got to be learning. Do you understand how real that idea is? That's why the Chachamim say that's why it's daytime on one side of the world when it's nighttime on the other side, because there has to always be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week learning Torah for the entire world to go around. For the world to survive and exist, there has to be Torah learning. Therefore, there's always daytime somewhere because somebody somewhere is always learning Torah. It revolves around Torah. That's the importance of Torah. It's the sunlight. If the sun ceases to exist, the world ceases to exist. Says now another way to look at it. The Zera Shimshon is giving us different reasons why Mishlei, Shlomo HaMelech in his wisdom, King Solomon compared the Torah to the sun and compared the mitzvot to a flame. שכשם שבנר מצינו שאף על פי שנר שמאיר לאדם אחד, אותו הנר מאיר גם ל100 אנשים. It says just like with a candle. When you light a candle, even though you want the light of the candle, whoever's in your vicinity also gets that light. Right? בוודאי מישהו מצוי קרוב לו, however, for sure, whoever is closer to you gets more of that light. The farther away they are, the less the light of the candle reaches. Make sense? Right? Here he goes a little deeper. It says, therefore, when you do a mitzvah, you have to do it with the right intention. You have to have kavanah when you do mitzvot. Mitzvot tzrichot kavanah. Mitzvah needs kavanah, needs intention, which means what? You're doing a mitzvah, right? The more kavanah you have in the mitzvah that you're doing, the more perfected that mitzvah is. The less kavanah you have, the less light it gives, so to speak. The less perfected that mitzvah is. For instance, you're shaking a lulav and etrog. You have no clue what a lulav and etrog is because you were on the street, and Baruch Hashem, we have these rabbanim that walk the streets and make sure people do mitzvot. Right? So they grab you and they go, listen, you want to shake a lulav and etrog? And you're like, you're on your way for a pizza delivery. You have no clue. What is this, stick and a little lemon? But he asks you, are you Jewish? You go, yeah, my mother's Jewish. You're like, all right, shake a lulav and etrog. He's got the light of a candle. He's doing a mitzvah. However, how far-reaching is that mitzvah? Not much. Because he doesn't really know what he's doing. He's doing what the guy's telling him to do. Okay, hold this branch and hold this citrus fruit in his hand. Say Baruch Atah Asher Kiddushanu. And then shake this way. He thinks you're crazy. Now turn around, shake the other way. What does he know what he's doing? Not much. As opposed to, I don't know if you guys have ever seen a Kabbalist, a Mekubal, someone that knows Kabbalah, shake Gelulam Anatrog. You watch such a person doing it, you really you look at them, you really feel like he's pointing at something or someone and poking them with it.
Yeah.
It's like you're feeling like he knows where the Satan is mekatreg, where the Yetzer Hara is, and he's destroying the Yetzer Hara with this mitzvah. Because he has so many kavanot. He knows exactly what you're supposed to be thinking, how you're supposed to be feeling, what are you doing right now, what parts of the realms of the heavens am I really right now addressing with this mitzvah. When you do a mitzvah like that, your ner is much more far-reaching. It's farther. Right? But it's still what? It's still a ner. It's a flame. It might become a torch with the intensity of your kavanah, with the intensity of your intention of the mitzvah, but it's still a torch. It's still a fire. It could be maintained for a period of time, and that's it. Then he says, he says, we can understand that Hatam Sheba Mitzvah Hiktim HaPasuk Tevat Ner. Says this is why you have to understand when it comes to this pasuk of Mishlei, how does it quote the pasuk? Shlomo HaMelech says, Ner Mitzvah VeTorah Or. It first says candle or flame. Flame is mitzvah. Torah is or. Torah is the sun. Shouldn't it be flame is mitzvah, or is Torah? But it switches it. By the mitzvah, it mentions the ner, the flame first. By the Torah, it first says Torah, and then it says the light of the sun. So he's saying either it should say ner mitzvah, the or Torah, or say mitzvah ner, the Torah or. Mitzvah is a ner and a Torah is or. Why do you switch it around? He says, but this is the reason he says. He says, because by a mitzvah, this is beautiful, like we were explaining. It says, because by a mitzvah, you first need the kavanah. You first need the intention. When you're doing mitzvot, you first need to have the correct intention. I'm about to do this mitzvah, and then you do the mitzvah. For instance, even when we pray, in our tefillot, Sefaradim have something called L'Shem Yahud. We go L'Shem Yahud Kudsha Berichush Chinte B'Tchailu Rechamo, right? Hari Ani Mekayem et Mitzvat, so and so. I behold, I'm about to do the mitzvah of this. Right? Leit palel tefilat arvit. I'm about to pray the tefillah of arvit. Why do we do L'Shem Yechud? Because people in time, little by little, started missing the correct kavanah. They're not always focused. So before you start, the L'Shem Yechud was put there. Here, in order to help you focus, I am about to start praying to Hashem the prayer of Mincha. So that you get focused, here's what I'm going to do. I'm doing the mitzvah that what? Avraham Avinu taught us how to do, which was pray shacharit. I'm about to do the mitzvah of Mincha. Who taught us, the first person to teach us how to do the mitzvah of praying Mincha? Yitzchak Avinu. I'm about to do Arvit. Who was the first person to do it? Yaakov Avinu. So we take it just like our forefather Yaakov. I'm about to do Arvit. This way, you're focused. You get the right intention. So because you need the intention, the ner comes first. Ner mitzvah. First, put on the flame. Flame on. You're about to do the mitzvah. How far is the mitzvah going to be reaching? Depends on your kavanah. You need the kavanah, so the kavanah comes first. However, this is a beautiful chidush that many people do not know. Amnam Torah, but when it comes to Torah, it's not the same way. The Torah only enlightens you after you learn it, not before. You don't need any kavanah. The Torah does the job for you. You just sit and learn. This helps a lot of people that feel, I'm going to learn Torah. What am I going to do learning Torah? I'm such a hypocrite. I do this, I do that. I want to sit and learn Torah. No. He's saying Torah is so holy. Torah is so kadosh. You don't even need an intention. You know what? Someone came and told you, I'll pay you $500 a day. Sit and learn Mishnayot. Don't think to yourself, but I'm only doing it for the money. Do it. Torah doesn't need intention, doesn't need anything. You know why? Because when you learn the Torah, even for the wrong intentions, it'll help you learn, and then from that you will grow. Soon you'll be doing it for the right intentions. Let the Torah do its job. The Torah changes people by itself. You don't need the right intention, you don't need nothing. Chachamim say, that's what the Chachamim say famously. Mitoch shelo lishma ba lishma. When you do Torah learning, shelo lishma, not for the sake of heaven, ba lishma. It'll come to a point when you'll be doing it for the sake of heaven. The Torah itself will enlighten you. The Torah itself is the light, is the kavanah. You don't need an intention. The Torah itself is the intention. This is not the means to the goal. It is the goal. That's the Torah. For doing a mitzvah, you need the right kavanah, you need the right intention. Torah, you don't need anything. You should just be doing it. Just sit and learn. It'll change you by itself. Because it is the everlasting or. Therefore, it's the Torah that gives you the or, not your kavanah. The Torah itself will give you the light, not your intention. With the mitzvot, you need the intention to light the candle. And the higher the intention, the farther reaching the light of the candle. With the Torah, no. The Torah itself is the or, and it's the everlasting or. It's equal for everywhere. You don't understand Gemara, you don't understand Talmud, you don't understand this stuff. You learning Chumash and you doing your best to learn Chumash, you're just as important as somebody else that's learning Gemara. Because it's the fact that you're doing it that matters. And he goes even further. Even if you're learning Torah and you don't even know what it's saying. He says the Torah is so kadosh, you don't even need to understand it. When you learn and you don't understand it, that zechut will give you the understanding the next time or the next time. It'll do the job for you. Many times, people ask me, this person has gone off the derech and he doesn't keep anything, he's eating pork, what do you think we should learn with that person? What do you think I should learn with that person? My ashkafa from my yeshiva is, it doesn't matter what you learn with that person. Start learning Mishnayot. The guy doesn't know what's flying, don't worry, the Torah will do the job itself. The Torah will change that person. You don't have to start talking about science and this. You don't have to. You can. But when you do the Torah itself, it'll do the job. I've seen this hundreds, if not thousands of times. The Torah itself will change a person. It has kedusha in it. He says, says when that person sits and learns the Torah with vikut, even though he might not understand it, it might be too difficult, it says the help comes from Shamayim. That help comes from somewhere else. If you start doing it, he'll help you. You will understand it. There were many, many of greats, gaonim in the world, great tzaddikim, that when they were kids, the rabbis from the yeshiva would go to their parents and go, I feel like you're wasting your money. If you teach your son a trade, he'll be much better. At least he'll be able to support himself in life. He's learning Torah in yeshiva, he just doesn't get it. There's a famous story when the boy heard this, he came crying to his parents, please don't take me out of yeshiva. I'm trying, but I'll try harder. And that boy became one of the greatest, I forget who it was, became the greatest Talmidei Chachamim. And he wrote in his Sfarim that when he was a kid, he couldn't understand a thing in the Torah. He didn't have it. The Torah is not like mathematics. The Torah is not like science. It's not like algebra. You're either this way, you're either good at algebra, you're bad at English, or you're good in English and you're bad at algebra. That's what they say. Torah doesn't work that way. You could be a person that, God forbid, is not even smart. If you put your head into the Torah doesn't come from you. It's a gift. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give it to you. It's a light that will take you by itself. It'll change you by itself. That's what the Torah is. It's not you doing. It'll come to you. Therefore it says, the Torah or. Therefore by the Torah, the or comes afterwards. Why? Because it's the Torah that brings the or. It's not you. It's the Torah that brings the light. It's not you. You just sit, do it. You don't understand it, it's fine. Do it. Just learn it. And from here, we see the importance, the greatness of learning Torah. The mitzvot are great. I gave a lecture yesterday and I spoke about the importance of doing mitzvot. If you're going to learn Torah, you have to implement the Torah in your life and do the mitzvot. You can't just learn Torah and not do mitzvot. But this is teaching us that even if you're not even holding in that level, when you learn the Torah, the light is so great that it will bring you to do the mitzvot. The light is not just like a candle. It'll just affect everything, every aspect of your life. So we should never think, who am I to learn Torah? What am I going to understand? Don't worry. Pick something and learn it. You don't understand it, it's fine. At least you said something, you learned something. And with that, it'll bring you to higher and higher and higher levels. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.